Velsara stared at the transport ship with growing dread. The metal hull was old and scratched, nothing like the sleek warships of the Kryn Empire. This vessel carried conscripts from the outer worlds, species dragged into a war they never asked for. The Void Swarm was eating through star systems like a disease, and the Galactic Tribunal needed bodies to throw at the darkness. She was a mid-ranking officer, which meant she got the jobs nobody wanted. Today, that meant commanding a mixed battalion of aliens who barely spoke the same language. Velsara's skin shifted from blue to gray as stress hormones flooded her system. The Kryn were known for their tactical brilliance and long lives. They calculated every risk, planned every move. They survived by being smart. The transport doors hissed open, smoke poured out, along with the smell of fear and unwashed bodies. First came the Torgans, massive reptilian beings with thick scales that could stop most bullets. Then the Mishka, small and quick, their 4 arms carrying weapons twice their size, standard conscripts, cannon fodder with a slim chance of survival. Then came the humans. Velsara had read the briefing about Earth, a small planet in an unremarkable system, only contacted by the Tribunal 3 months ago. The humans had no space travel, no energy shields, no genetic modifications. They were soft-skinned mammals that died from simple infections. Their bones broke easily. They needed to eat multiple times per day just to function. Why the Tribunal conscripted them was a mystery. It seemed cruel, even by wartime standards. 4 humans walked down the ramp. They looked around with wide eyes, taking in the massive space station with its artificial gravity and floating platforms. One of them stumbled and nearly fell. Another was crying quietly. These were not soldiers. These were people grabbed from their homes and thrown into hell. "Form up!" Velsara barked in Galactic Common. Her translator implant would make the words understandable to all species. "Line formation, now!" The Torgans and Mishka moved quickly into position. The humans stood confused for a moment before copying the others. Velsara walked down the line, inspecting each soldier. When she reached the humans, she had to stop herself from sighing. The first was a male, tall for a human, with dark hair and tired eyes. He wore simple clothes that were already torn in places. No armor, no combat suit, just fabric. "Name?" Velsara asked. "Teho," the human said. His translator, Chip, mangled the pronunciation slightly. "I was building a house when they took me. Do you know when I can go home?" Velsara didn't answer. She moved to the next human, a female with short hair and glasses that seemed unnecessary given modern medicine. "Jiwoo, I taught children history." The female's voice was steady, but her hands shook. "This is a mistake. I'm not a fighter." The third was another female, this one with medical symbols on her torn clothing. "Hey, one, doctor. I need to contact my hospital. I have patients who—" "You're a soldier now," Velsara cut her off. "Your only patient is yourself. Try to stay alive." The last human was a male with broad shoulders and burn scars on his arms. "Sungmin, firefighter." He looked Velsara in the eyes, which was considered rude in Kryn culture. "Where's the enemy?" At least one of them had some courage, Velsara thought. Behind her, she heard laughter. 3 Torgan soldiers were pointing at the humans and making jokes in their growling language. The translator caught fragments. Soft meat. Dead in a day. Why even give them weapons? Velsara wanted to disagree, but she couldn't. Everything about humans screamed victim. They had no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. Their reaction time was average at best. They couldn't see in the dark or breathe toxic atmospheres. They were just ordinary. Painfully, fatally ordinary. "Listen up," Velsara addressed the entire battalion. "We deploy to Station Karis in 2 hours. The Void Swarm is 3 days away. Our mission is simple. Hold the station for 72 hours while civilians evacuate. Intelligence says we're facing a standard assault force. Expect heavy casualties." She pulled up a hologram of the enemy. The image showed a void swarm creature, all black chitin and too many legs, with a mouth that split open in 4 directions. Several soldiers stepped back. The humans just stared. "These things don't die easy," Velzara continued. "Energy weapons are only 50% effective. Their bodies regenerate. They feel no pain and take no prisoners. They will eat you alive if you let them get close. Standard doctrine: maintain defensive positions, overlapping fields of fire, controlled retreats. Follow orders, and some of you might survive." "Question." Tejo raised his hand like he was in a classroom. "What if we run out of ammunition?" "Then you're dead," Velzara said simply. "What if we use something else? Tools? The station must have industrial equipment." Several aliens chuckled. One Mishka soldier made a gesture that meant "stupid child" in his culture. "We use military weapons," Velzara said firmly. "Not toys. Understood?" "Understood," Tejo replied, but his eyes were thoughtful. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of equipment distribution and basic training. The humans struggled with their weapons, armor that didn't quite fit their bodies, and communication systems that confused them. Velzara watched Jiwoo try to load her rifle 3 times before figuring it out. Haewon kept activating her helmet's medical scanner by accident. Sungmin managed better, but he held his weapon like it might explode. Only Tae-ho seemed calm. He studied everything carefully, asked quiet questions, and helped the other humans when they struggled. It reminded Velzara of how parents treated children. These humans were taking care of each other. "They'll be dead in the first hour," her second officer, a Kryn named Zelmoth, said quietly. "I've seen their medical files. No combat enhancements, no genetic optimization, nothing. They're civilians with guns." "We're all civilians with guns," Velzara replied. "The swarm doesn't care." "Yes, but we have scales, claws, natural weapons. They have skin that tears and bones that snap. This is murder, not conscription." Velzara's skin flickered gray again. "I know, but orders are orders. We do our duty." The transport to Station Karis was crowded and loud. Soldiers from different species argued over space, checked weapons, or prayed to their various gods. The humans sat together in one corner, speaking softly in their native language. Velzara's translator picked up fragments. "I miss my daughter," Haewon whispered. "We all miss someone," Jiwoo replied. "We stick together. That's how we survive." "Do you think we'll survive?" Sungmin asked. Taeho was quiet for a long moment. "Probably not. But maybe we can help others survive. That's something." They accepted their death so easily. No anger, no denial, just quiet acceptance. Velzara had seen soldiers face death before, but this was different. These humans weren't warriors. They were ordinary people who somehow understood they were going to die and decided to be useful anyway. Station Karis appeared through the viewport. It was a massive structure built into an asteroid, covered in weapons and shields. But Velzara knew the truth. Those defenses were designed for pirates and raiders, not for the Void Swarm. When the darkness came, stone and metal wouldn't matter. Only one thing would matter: who was willing to stand and fight when everything said to run. Velzara looked at the 4 humans one more time. They looked so fragile, so unprepared. By all logic, they would die quickly and accomplish nothing. She had no idea how wrong she was. The alarm screamed through Station Karis exactly 68 hours after they arrived, 4 hours ahead of schedule. The Void Swarm never followed predictions. Velzara was in the command center when the sensors lit up red. Hundreds of contacts, moving fast, coming from all directions. The enemy wasn't just attacking, they were swarming like insects drawn to light. All units to defensive positions, she ordered. Seal internal bulkheads. Activate point defense systems. Someone get me a tactical overview. The screens showed the nightmare approaching. Black shapes against the stars, moving with purpose that shouldn't exist in mindless creatures. The void swarm looked like it was thinking, planning. That was impossible. Everyone knew the swarm ran on instinct alone, unless everyone was wrong. First wave hits in 3 minutes, Zelmoth reported. His skin had gone pale gray with fear. Estimate 400 hostiles. Station shields won't last long. Velsara opened the battalion-wide channel. Remember your training. Hold your positions. Controlled fire. Don't waste ammunition. We just need to survive until the evacuation is complete. She didn't mention that the evacuation transports needed 48 more hours, or that their ammunition wouldn't last half that time. Soldiers fought better when they thought survival was possible. The shields lit up as the first swarm creatures hit. They weren't flying or using ships. They just moved through space like they owned it, their bodies protected by something that wasn't quite armor. Energy weapons splashed against them, killing some, wounding more, but too many got through. Then they hit the station hull. The sound was wrong. Not the bang of an impact, but a wet tearing noise, like flesh being opened. The swarm creatures had claws that cut through metal like paper. Alarms shrieked as hull breaches opened in a dozen locations. "Seal those breaches," Velsara ordered. "All units engage." The fighting started in the outer corridors. Velsara watched through security cameras as her soldiers fired into the darkness. The void swarm poured through holes in the walls, their bodies absorbing bullets and energy blasts. A Torgan soldier emptied his weapon into one creature's chest. It kept coming, grabbed him with too many legs, and pulled him into the darkness. His screams cut off quickly. "Section 7 is falling back," a voice reported. "Section 12 is requesting support. Section 4 is gone. No survivors." Velsara felt her skin turn almost white. They'd been fighting for 10 minutes and already lost a quarter of her forces. At this rate, they'd be dead within the hour. "Commander!" Zelmoth pointed at one screen. "The humans! They're not in position." Velsara's blood went cold. She'd assigned the humans to a relatively safe position in the interior. It was an act of mercy. Let them die slowly instead of being in the first wave. But the screen showed their position empty. "Where are they?" "According to their locators, they're in the industrial section, the manufacturing area." "What are they doing there? That's not their assignment." Before anyone could answer, an explosion rocked the station, not from outside, from inside, in the manufacturing section. The screens showed fire and debris, but also something else. Swarm creatures falling back, burning. "Get me a visual on the humans, now!" The camera feed showed chaos. Tejo had ripped a plasma cutter from a construction rig and was using it like a weapon. The blue-white flame cutting through swarm creatures like butter. Jiwoo had jury-rigged some kind of explosive thrower using mining charges and a cargo launcher. When she fired, entire groups of creatures exploded in flames. Hei Wan wasn't fighting. She was running through the battle, dragging wounded soldiers to cover, her medical scanner flashing as she worked. A Kryn soldier who'd been left for dead was now being bandaged and dragged to safety. It made no sense. Running into fire to save someone already dying was illogical. Sungmin had found the station's industrial cargo loader, a massive machine designed to lift tons of equipment. He was using it to crush swarm creatures against the walls, the machine's metal arms moving with surprising speed. "They're winning?" Zelmoth sounded confused. "That section was overrun. How are they winning?" "They're not following doctrine," Velsara whispered. "They're improvising." As she watched, the humans' tactics became clearer. They weren't holding defensive positions. They were attacking, moving, using the environment itself as a weapon. Tejo led a swarm creature into a pressurized tank and ruptured it, the explosion taking out 5 more enemies. Jiwoo used her explosive launcher to collapse a corridor behind the swarm, cutting them off from reinforcements. It was chaos. It was inefficient. It violated every rule of military engagement. It was working. "All units," Velsera heard herself say. "Adapt to human tactics. Use environmental weapons. Stop defending. Start attacking." The battle shifted. Soldiers who'd been retreating saw the humans winning and found courage. A Mishka squad used industrial acid from a storage tank. A Torgan group copied Sung Min's idea and started using cargo loaders as weapons. The swarm had evolved to fight guns and energy weapons. They didn't know what to do when the enemy started using the station itself. Velsara left the command center. She had to see this in person. The industrial section was hell. Bodies everywhere, both alien and swarm. The walls were scorched and broken. The air smelled like burned meat and chemicals. But the humans were still alive, still fighting. "Jiwoo, left side!" Taeho shouted. The female spun and fired her makeshift launcher. A swarm creature exploded in mid-leap. She didn't pause, just reloaded and kept moving. Her glasses were cracked and her face was covered in black blood, but her hands were steady. Haewon ran past Velsara, dragging a wounded Mishka soldier. "Don't just stand there, help me!" Velsara grabbed the soldier's other arm. They got him behind cover. Haewon's medical scanner beeped. "He's lost too much blood," Velsara said. "Leave him." "No." Haewon pulled out a medical kit and started working. "I'm a doctor. I don't decide who lives. I just fight for everyone." "You'll die trying to save him." "Maybe." Haewon didn't look up. "But I won't die leaving him." A roar made them both turn. 3 swarm creatures were charging their position. Velsara raised her weapon, knowing it wouldn't be enough. Jiwoo stepped between them and the creatures. Just one small human female with a weapon made from spare parts. She planted her feet and started firing. 1 explosive charge, 2, 3. The creatures kept coming. She was going to die. "Fall back," Velsara shouted. "No!" Jiwoo's weapon clicked empty. She dropped it and pulled out a welding torch from her belt, a tool meant for repairs. The flame was weak, barely 2 feet long. The creatures were 20 feet away, 15, 10. Jiwoo stood her ground and swung the torch like a sword. The creatures reached her. 1 claw scraped her armor, leaving a deep cut. Another nearly took her head off. But Jiwoo kept fighting, kept moving, the small torch flame finding eyes and soft joints. She was screaming now, not in fear but in rage. Sung Min appeared from nowhere and slammed into the creatures with his cargo loader. Metal crashed against chitin. Jiwoo dove clear just as Sung Min crushed all 3 enemies against the wall. "I said fall back!" Velsara shouted. "Your orders were to hold for 72 hours, Taeho replied calmly, his plasma cutter still cutting through enemies. "We're holding. You're supposed to hold defensively, not charge into battle. We tried defensive. We died back on Earth when we tried just defending." Taeho's face was hard. "Here, we attack." "That's insane. You'll all die." "Yes." Taeho cut down another creature. "But maybe later instead of now." The battle raged for 14 hours straight. No breaks, no rest. The swarm kept coming and the defenders kept fighting. Soldiers copied human tactics, learned to improvise, stopped thinking like prey, and started acting like predators. Jiwoo held a corridor alone for 14 minutes when her position was overrun and reinforcements couldn't reach her. She used her welding torch, pieces of debris, even her own helmet as weapons. When relief finally arrived, she was standing in a pile of dead creatures, barely conscious, still swinging the torch at shadows. Sung Min detonated explosives in a corridor that was being overwhelmed, timing his escape with impossible precision. He ran through the blast wave, got thrown 20 feet, hit a wall hard enough to crack his armor, and got back up to keep fighting. Haewon saved 17 soldiers that day. She ran into fire, pulled people from death, worked on wounds while creatures tried to kill her. She didn't kill a single enemy. She just refused to let anyone die alone. When the swarm finally retreated, pulled away by some signal nobody understood, the station was barely standing. Half the battalion was dead. The survivors were wounded, exhausted, out of ammunition. All 4 humans were still alive. Velsara found them sitting together in a ruined corridor, sharing water and helping each other with injuries. They looked terrible. Burns, cuts, broken bones. But they were helping each other, making quiet jokes, acting like they'd just finished a hard day of work instead of surviving impossible odds. "Why?" Velsara asked. "Why didn't you follow orders? Why did you risk everything?" Tejo looked up at her with those tired eyes. "Your orders were to survive. We just found a better way to do it. You could have died. We were dying anyway. Your defensive positions were death traps." Tejo stood up, wincing from broken ribs. "So we stopped defending and started fighting. Seemed smarter." Velsara wanted to argue, wanted to say that military doctrine existed for a reason. That chaos wasn't strategy, that luck wasn't skill, but they'd won, against impossible odds, using improvised weapons and tactics that shouldn't work. They'd won. For the first time, Velsara wondered, what kind of species doesn't calculate survival odds? What kind of people just decide to win and make it happen through sheer stubbornness? What kind of species fights like they have nothing to lose? The medal ceremony felt wrong. Velsara stood on the platform watching the tribunal representatives pin honors on her soldiers. The Kryn got medals for tactical excellence. The Torgans got medals for bravery. The humans got medals too, but nobody could look them in the eye while doing it, because everyone knew the truth. This wasn't a reward. It was an apology for what came next. "Battalion 7749, the tribunal speaker announced, his voice amplified across the assembly hall. "You are hereby redeployed to Broken Moon. Departure in 6 hours. That is all." The room went silent. Soldiers looked at each other with fear and resignation. Broken Moon wasn't a deployment. It was an execution. Velsara had read the intelligence reports. Broken Moon was a mining colony on a shattered planet, destroyed centuries ago by some ancient war. The pieces still orbited each other, held together by unstable gravity. The tribunal wanted the rare minerals in its core. The Void Swarm wanted to use it as a forward base. And now, a swarm dreadnought was coming. Something that had never been defeated in recorded history. "Commander," Zelmoth approached quietly, "we can't win this. You know that, right? A dreadnought is a mobile fortress. It carries thousands of swarm creatures and has armor that resists everything we have. Protocol says we evacuate and let the dreadnought have the moon." "Protocol changed," Velsara replied bitterly. "Now protocol says we buy time for the evacuation. 3 days minimum." "We won't last 3 hours." "I know." The transport to Broken Moon was different from last time. No prayers, no preparation. Just quiet acceptance that they were all going to die. Some soldiers wrote final messages to families. Others just stared at nothing, already seeing their own deaths. The humans sat together like always. Velsara walked over to them, not sure what to say. "How do you talk to people you're sending to die?" "Tejo," she started, "I want you to know—" "We know," he interrupted gently. "We looked up dreadnoughts. We know what they can do." "I'm sorry. If I could—" "Commander." Jiwoo smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. "You're a soldier following orders. We understand. It's not your fault. I could refuse. I could—" "And they'd execute you and send someone else," Haiwan said. "We've seen how this works. You're trying to keep as many of us alive as possible. We appreciate that." Sungmin just nodded. He'd been quiet since the battle at Station Keres, something dark in his eyes. Broken Moon looked like a nightmare from orbit. Huge chunks of rock floating in a deadly dance, held together by gravity that changed direction randomly. The mining colony was built into the largest piece, tunnels and facilities carved deep into stone. They had 48 hours to prepare. Velsara set up defensive positions, placed weapons, ran drills. Standard military procedure. Everything by the book. The humans wandered off. She found them 6 hours later in the deep mining tunnels, standing around a massive support shaft that ran through the entire moon fragment. Taiho was studying a holographic display of the moon's structure. Jiwoo was examining the shaft supports. Sungmin was calculating something on a data pad. "What are you doing?" Velsara asked. "Planning," Taiho replied. "Planning what? Your defensive position is—" "We're not defending," Jiwoo said. "We're attacking." Velsara felt her skin shift to confused yellow. "Attacking? A dreadnought? That's suicide." "Defending is suicide too," Taiho pointed at the hologram. "See this gravity well? Broken Moon's pieces are held together by unstable gravitational forces. If something massive gets too close, the gravity can shift, become stronger." "I know how gravity works," Velsara said. "What's your point?" "What if we make it shift on purpose?" Sungmin looked up from his data pad. "What if we lure the dreadnought over this shaft, then collapse it? The falling rock would pull the dreadnought down into the moon's core." Velsara stared at them. That's insane. The gravitational shift would crush everything in this section. Everyone in the tunnels would die. "Yes," Taiho said simply. "And someone would need to be inside the shaft to manually override the support systems. The automated controls wouldn't work fast enough." "Yes." "So you're proposing a plan where someone has to stay inside a collapsing tunnel while a dreadnought gets crushed above them. They would die, certainly." "Absolutely." "Yes," all three humans said together. Haewon stepped forward. "But the dreadnought would die too, and everyone else on the moon could evacuate during the collapse. You'd save thousands of lives. At the cost of whoever stays behind." "Commander." Taiho's voice was patient, like he was explaining something to a child. "We're all dying anyway. Your defensive plan gives us maybe 3 hours before we're overrun. This plan actually accomplishes something." "It's murder. I won't order someone to certain death." "Then don't order it." Jiwoo smiled sadly. "We'll volunteer." Velsara felt like reality was breaking. In Kryn culture, unnecessary sacrifice was wasteful. You fought smart, preserved lives, accepted defeat when victory was impossible. You didn't throw yourself away for nothing. But the humans weren't throwing themselves away for nothing. They were trading their lives for thousands of others. They'd done the math and decided it was worth it. "I forbid this," Velsara said firmly. "As your commanding officer, I forbid this plan. We defend according to protocol. That's final." The humans looked at each other. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. "Understood, Commander," Taiho said. But Velsara saw the lie in his eyes. The dreadnought arrived 18 hours later. It emerged from the darkness like a small moon itself, all black metal and organic curves. Gun ports opened along its sides, thousands of them. Launch bays vomited swarm creatures by the hundreds. "All units engage," Velsara ordered. The defensive positions opened fire, missiles, energy weapons, kinetic rounds. The dreadnought's shields absorbed everything. Not deflected. Absorbed. The weapons hit and simply vanished into the blackness. "It's not working," Zelmoth shouted. "Nothing's working." A swarm drop pod hit the moon's surface, then another, then dozens. The creatures poured out and charged the colony. The battle had begun. Velsara fought at the front line, her weapon heating in her hands as she fired again and again. The swarm was endless. For every creature that fell, 3 more took its place. The defensive positions were being overrun. "Commander!" a voice screamed in her communicator. "The humans! They're not at their positions!" Velsara's blood went cold. She pulled up the tactical display and saw 3 human signals moving through the deep tunnels, moving toward the main shaft. "No!" she whispered. Then louder. No! Tae-ho! I gave you an order! Tae-ho's voice came through, calm and steady. Sorry, Commander, but someone has to do this. Might as well be us. I forbid this. I know. We're disobeying orders. You can put us on report. There was dark humor in his voice. When this is over, Velzara abandoned her position and ran. Through burning corridors, past fighting soldiers, down into the deep tunnels. She had to stop them, had to make them see reason. She reached the shaft entrance just as the three humans were setting up their equipment. Explosives, override controls, a manual detonator. Stop! Velzara shouted. That's an order! We need you to do something for us, Jiwoo said, ignoring the order. She handed Velzara a datapad. When we trigger the collapse, you have exactly 4 minutes to evacuate everyone. Use the western tunnels. They're safest. Don't look back. Don't try to save us. I won't let you do this. Sungmin blocked her way, gentle but firm. Commander, we're already dead. We died when we got conscripted into this war. This way our deaths mean something. Please, let us mean something. Hae-won was crying, but her hands were steady as she worked on the controls. Tell my family I was helping people, that's all. Just tell them I helped. Where's Tae-ho? Velzara demanded. Already topside, Jiwoo said. Someone has to pilot the distraction. Distraction? The communicator crackled. Commander, there's a cargo shuttle launching from Base 7. Who authorized that? It's Tae-ho, Jiwoo explained. He's going to get the dreadnought's attention. Lead it over the shaft. Give us a clear shot. Velzara pulled up the external cameras. A small shuttle was flying directly at the dreadnought, weapons firing. It was like watching an insect attack a mountain. The dreadnought's guns swiveled toward the tiny craft. He's going to die, Velzara said. Yes, Jiwoo replied, but he'll die pulling that monster into position. And then we finish it. I can't allow this. You can't stop it. Sungmin was checking the charges. It's already happening. You have a choice, Commander. Let 3 humans die for nothing, or let us die doing something that matters. Use us. Save everyone else. Velzara wanted to argue, wanted to say there had to be another way. But the dreadnought was firing now, tearing through the colony's defenses. Soldiers were dying. The evacuation was stalled. 4 minutes, she whispered. You're sure? We're sure. Velzara made the hardest decision of her life. She turned and ran back up the tunnel, screaming into her communicator. All units, evacuate now. Western tunnels, 4 minutes. Move, move, move! She reached the surface just in time to see Tae-ho's shuttle dodge a blast from the dreadnought. The massive ship was moving, following the tiny craft like a predator chasing prey. Tae-ho was leading it in a dance, staying just ahead of its guns, pulling it toward the shaft. Almost there! Tae-ho's voice was strained. Tell them! Tell them it was worth it! Tae-ho! Velzara started. In position! Jiwoo's voice cut in. Detonating in 10 seconds! The world exploded. The shaft supports blew apart with a roar that shook the entire moon. Rock began to fall, tons of it, pulled by gravity suddenly shifting. The dreadnought, caught above the collapse, tried to pull away. Too slow. The gravity well caught it and pulled down. The massive ship screamed, metal tearing, as it was dragged into the collapsing shaft. Tae-ho's shuttle was caught in the same pull, spiraling down into the darkness. Get them out! Velzara screamed, knowing it was pointless. Someone get them out! But there was no one to save. The shaft collapsed completely, taking the dreadnought with it. Rock and metal and bodies, all crushed together in the moon's core. The entire colony shook like it was dying. Then silence. Velzara stood at the edge of the crater where the shaft used to be. There was nothing left, just broken stone and darkness. The humans were gone, all 4 of them. Tae-ho, Jiwoo, Hae-won, Sungmin. They'd sacrificed themselves to kill something unkillable. And it had worked. The dreadnought was dead. First one in recorded history. Velzara's legs gave out. She sat in the dust and ash, staring at nothing. Zelmoth found her there an hour later. The evacuation was successful, he reported quietly. 2,000 civilians saved. Minimal military casualties. The humans, they saved everyone. They didn't have to die, Velsara whispered. Yes, they did, Zelmoth said. They knew it, they chose it. That's what makes it matter. Velsara finally understood. Humans didn't fight to survive, they fought to win. And if winning meant dying, they died without hesitation. What kind of species does that? What kind of people trade their lives so easily for others they barely knew? What kind of warriors don't even consider themselves warriors? Velsara couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw them falling into darkness. Taeho's shuttle spiraling down, Jiwoo and Haewon and Sungmin trapped in collapsing stone. 4 humans who shouldn't have been soldiers, dying like heroes. She'd filed her report, praised their sacrifice, recommended them for the highest honors. The words felt empty. The replacement conscripts arrived 3 weeks later. More humans, pulled from Earth to fill the gaps. They looked just as confused and scared as the first group. Velsara watched them stumble off the transport, wearing clothes from their old lives, carrying no weapons, knowing nothing about war. One of them stood out, a male with a familiar face. It took Velsara a moment to realize why he looked familiar. "Taeho?" she whispered. "No, Commander," the human replied. His translator chip made his accent clear. "I'm Dong-Su. Taeho was my brother. They told me what happened. I volunteered to take his place." Velsara felt something break inside her. "Your brother died. Why would you volunteer?" "Because someone has to." Dong-Su's eyes had the same look as Taeho's, tired but determined. "Earth is small, weak, but we can still help." That's what he believed. "So I'm here." She wanted to send him home, wanted to tell him that his brother's sacrifice should be enough, that Earth had given plenty already. But the war continued. The void swarm kept coming. Bodies were needed. "Welcome to Battalion 7749, Velsara said quietly. "Try to survive." The new humans integrated slowly. They learned from the other species, copied tactics, asked endless questions. But something was different about them. They knew about Taeho and the others. The story had spread through Earth somehow, passed from person to person until it became legend. The 4 humans who killed a dreadnought. It changed how they fought. The new conscripts weren't just trying to survive. They were trying to prove something. That Earth mattered. That humans could stand alongside other species. That death with meaning was better than life with fear. Velsara threw herself into research. She accessed the tribunal's restricted archives, searching for answers. Why did humans fight this way? What made them so different? The answers she found terrified her. The files were old. Some dated back thousands of years. References to Earth appeared throughout, always connected to something called the Old Ones or the Eternal Choir. One file described an attempted invasion of Earth 3,000 years ago. The Old Ones were godlike beings, capable of bending reality to their will. They'd conquered hundreds of worlds without resistance. Earth should have been easy, but humans didn't know they were supposed to lose. The report described a battle in a place called Mesopotamia. The Old Ones sent their champions, beings of pure energy that could not be killed by mortal weapons. Humans attacked them with bronze swords and stone spears. They died by the thousands. But they kept coming, wave after wave, generation after generation. One passage made Velsara's skin turn white. The humans do not calculate odds. They do not surrender when victory is impossible. One of their children, no more than 12 cycles old, killed the being called Reshatar. The child took 17 mortal wounds. His body should have stopped functioning, but he continued striking with a sharpened stick until Reshatar's physical form dissolved. The child died seconds later, smiling. The Old Ones retreated from that sector, declaring it cursed ground where even gods can die. Another file described a second invasion attempt during Earth's medieval period. Same result. Humans with primitive weapons against beings who could rewrite physics. Humans lost every battle and won the war through sheer refusal to stop. A third invasion during Earth's industrial age. The old ones tried a different approach. Biological warfare. Engineered plagues designed to wipe out humanity. Humans lost millions. The old ones expected surrender. Instead, humans weaponized the plague right back. They studied it, understood it, and turned it into something even the old ones feared. The report described human scientists dying from the plague while still working, passing their research to others with their last breaths. The old ones abandoned Earth permanently after that. Their final transmission was recorded. They are broken machines that refuse to stop. They should fear us. They should worship us. Instead, they fight. Even their children fight. Even their dying fight. This species is contaminated with something we do not understand. A madness that looks like courage. A death wish that looks like strategy. Leave them alone. Let them burn themselves out in their own wars. If they ever reach the stars, we must ensure they serve only us or remain isolated. They are too dangerous otherwise. Velsara read the files 3 times, not believing what she was seeing. The Galactic Tribunal knew. They'd always known. That's why humans were conscripted, not as cannon fodder, as weapons. "You look troubled," Zelmoth said, finding her in the archive room at 3 in the morning. "The Tribunal is using them," Velsara said. "The humans. They know what humans can do. They're using them as shock troops, suicide soldiers. Every species is being used. That's what conscription means." "No!" Velsara pulled up the files. "Read this. The old ones, the beings who once ruled this galaxy, tried to conquer Earth 5 times. 5 times, Zelmoth. And lost every time. To humans with primitive weapons and no technology." Zelmoth read in silence. His skin went through several color changes. "This can't be real. Gods don't lose to primitives." They did. Because humans don't understand losing. They don't have the concept of impossible built into their thinking. They just keep fighting until something breaks. Usually them, but sometimes the enemy breaks first. If the Tribunal knows this, why conscript them at all? Why not just leave Earth alone? Velsara pulled up another file. This one was recent, classified at the highest level. She'd needed to hack 3 security systems to access it. "Because the Void Swarm isn't the real war," she said quietly. "It's a distraction." The file showed sensor data from deep space. Something was coming. Multiple signatures, massive beyond comprehension. Energy readings that matched the descriptions of the old ones. The eternal choir was returning. "They're coming back," Velsara explained. "After thousands of years, they're coming back to reclaim the galaxy. The Tribunal knows. They've been preparing. The Void Swarm was just the opening move, something to study us, measure our strength. And the humans? The Tribunal is training them, testing them, seeing if they'll fight the same way against impossible odds. Because when the Eternal Choir arrives, humans might be the only species crazy enough to fight back." Zelmoth was quiet for a long time. "That's monstrous, using an entire species as a weapon against gods." "Yes, we should tell them, warn them." "And say what? That their entire planet was conscripted because ancient gods fear them? That they're being thrown at the swarm to prepare them for something worse? The truth. The truth will terrify them. Or worse, it won't. They'll accept it and keep fighting anyway, because that's what humans do." Velsara thought about Tai-Ho's last words. Tell them it was worth it. He'd died believing he was saving people, never knowing he was just practice for a bigger war. A war against beings that could unmake reality itself. "What do we do?" Zelmoth asked. We keep them alive as long as we can. We train them, prepare them, and when the Eternal Choir arrives, we stand with them. Against gods? Against gods, Velsara confirmed. Humans proved it can be done. They killed gods with stone and bronze. What can they do with modern weapons, with ships and energy rifles? They'll still die. Everyone dies, Zelmoth. The question is what we do before that happens. A week later, the emergency alert came through. All commanders to report immediately. Velsara ran to the briefing room, her heart's pounding. The tribunal representative's face was pale, his skin showing fear colors across every species spectrum. "The Void Swarm has retreated," he announced. "All fronts, every system. They're pulling back to deep space." Murmurs of confusion and relief filled the room. "That's not all," the representative continued. "We've received a transmission from something claiming to be the Eternal Choir." The room went silent. "They're demanding our surrender, complete and unconditional. Serve them or be unmade from existence. We have 3 days to respond." "What's the tribunal's decision?" someone asked. "Every major civilization is negotiating, trying to find terms we can accept, ways to coexist. We can't fight them. They're gods." Velsara felt her blood run cold. The tribunal was giving up. After all the preparation, all the sacrifice, they were just going to surrender. "What about Earth?" she found herself asking. "What's Earth's response?" The representative pulled up a transmission. The audio was simple, just 2 words in a human language. The translator rendered it as, "No." "That's it?" Zelmoth asked. "Just no?" "Earth's full response was longer," the representative said. "But it amounts to the same thing. They refuse to surrender. They're mobilizing their entire population for war, against beings they can't possibly defeat." Someone laughed bitterly. "They're insane." "Yes," Velsara said, "but maybe that's exactly what we need." She looked around the room at the other commanders, saw fear, resignation, acceptance of defeat. Then she looked at Dong Su, standing with the other human conscripts, saw determination, anger, readiness. Humans didn't calculate odds. They didn't surrender when victory was impossible. They just fought until something broke. Velsara made her decision. "Battalion 7749 will not be negotiating," she announced. "We stand with Earth. If humans are insane enough to fight gods, then I'm insane enough to fight beside them." Zelmoth looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. But she remembered 4 humans falling into darkness to kill something unkillable. She remembered a child with a sharpened stick killing a god. She remembered that impossible didn't mean the same thing to humans as it did to everyone else. "Commander," Dong Su approached after the briefing. "Thank you for standing with us." "Thank your brother," Velsara replied. "He taught me something. About fighting, about meaning, about why we don't stop even when we should." "What did he teach you?" "That humans are terrifying, and maybe gods should be afraid." The Eternal Choir arrived on the 3rd day, exactly as promised. They didn't come in ships. They simply appeared in space like wounds in reality itself. Their forms too bright to look at directly, too complex for mortal minds to fully understand. Velsara watched from the bridge of the assault carrier as the beings manifested across the fleet's position. Hundreds of them, thousands, each one radiating power that made her instruments scream and her crew weep with instinctive terror. "All ships reporting mass equipment failure," Zelmoth reported. His voice was shaking. "They're not even attacking. Just being near them is breaking our technology." "What about the humans?" "Their equipment is failing too, but—" Zelmoth pulled up a visual. "They're still moving forward." The human ships were breaking apart, hulls cracking under the reality-bending presence of the Eternal Choir. But they didn't stop, didn't retreat. They just kept pushing forward through the impossible pressure. One of the eternal choir spoke, not in words, but in concepts that appeared directly in everyone's mind. We are the eternal. We shaped the void. We taught the stars to burn. Why do you resist the inevitable? Most of the galactic fleet had already powered down their weapons, accepting defeat, waiting for mercy. Earth's response came from a battered cruiser that was barely holding together. Because we don't care what you are. The voice was human, female. Velsara's computer identified her as Commander Bo-Ra, one of Earth's newest officers, someone who'd been a student 3 months ago. We've killed gods before, Bo-Ra continued. You'll be no different. The Eternal Choir's response was laughter that tore at reality. Space itself seemed to shred around the human fleet. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your ships crumble. You understand nothing of what we are. Then let's find out, Bo-Ra replied. The human fleet charged. It was suicide. Beautiful, terrible, certain suicide. Their ships fell apart around them. Their weapons fired and the shots dissolved before reaching targets. Soldiers died from proximity alone, their bodies unable to exist near beings of pure energy. But they kept coming. All ships, Velsara heard herself shout. Follow the humans. Engage the enemy. Commander, we can't fight them, Zelmoth protested. Then we'll die trying. Move! Her ship lurched forward. Other ships followed. Not many. Most of the fleet still hung back, paralyzed by fear or waiting for negotiations that would never come. But some followed. Some saw humans dying by the thousands and decided that if these soft-skinned mammals could charge gods, then anyone could. The battle was chaos. Not the organized chaos of military engagement, but the fundamental chaos of reality breaking down. The Eternal Choir didn't fight so much as simply exist, and their existence unmade everything around them. Velsara's ship got close to one of the beings. It looked like a fusion of light and geometry, shapes that hurt to perceive. It reached out with something that wasn't quite a hand. Her shields dissolved. Her hull began to break apart. Then a human fighter craft slammed into the being at full speed. The pilot had ejected her reactor's safety systems and overloaded the core. The explosion was nuclear scale, contained in a space the size of a room. The eternal being flickered. Just for a second, but it flickered. They can be hurt, someone shouted across the comm channels. They can be hurt. The information spread like fire. Suddenly more ships were charging. More soldiers were finding creative ways to die. A Torgan cruiser rammed an eternal being and detonated all its weapons at once. A Mishka squad rode a missile into the heart of another being and manually detonated it. But humans were still leading. Always humans. Dongsu's voice came through on Velsara's command channel. Commander, we've identified their anchor point. The thing keeping them stable in our reality. If we destroy it, they can't maintain physical form. Where is it? Their throne ship, at the center of their formation. Velsara pulled up the tactical display. The throne ship was massive, larger than a moon, protected by hundreds of eternal beings. Getting close was impossible. We're going in, Dongsu said. That's suicide. Yes, but we've done suicide before. We're good at it. Velsara wanted to stop him, wanted to find another way. But she'd learned. Humans didn't need to be protected from their own courage. They needed to be supported in it. I'm coming with you, she said. Commander, that's not a request, Dongsu. If you're dying today, I'm dying beside you. 20 ships formed up, human vessels mostly, but some Kryn, some Torgan, some Mishka. Soldiers from different species who'd learned to fight like humans, to charge when retreat made sense, to attack when defense was logical. They pushed toward the throne ship. Reality bent around them. Ships broke apart. Soldiers died from impossible physics. But the survivors kept going. Bo-Ra's cruiser exploded, taking an eternal being with it. She'd overloaded every system at once, turning her entire ship into a bomb. 300 humans died in that explosion. They took a god with them. "We're not going to make it," Zelmoth said quietly. He was right. Half their ships were gone. The throne ship was still too far away. They'd all die before reaching it. Then the impossible happened. More ships arrived. Earth ships, dozens of them, appearing from faster-than-light jumps. But these weren't military vessels. They were civilian transports, cargo haulers, personal ships, anything that could fly. "This is Transport Group Omega," a voice announced. A male human, calm like he was reporting weather. "We're from Earth. Figured you could use some help." "This is a war zone!" Velsara shouted. "Civilians shouldn't be here!" "We're humans, Commander. We go where we're needed." The civilian ships charged. They had no weapons, no armor, no shields. They just rammed straight into the eternal beings, using their ships as projectiles. It was the stupidest, most wasteful, most insanely brave thing Velsara had ever seen. And it worked. The gap opened, just enough. Dongsu's ship, Velsara's ship, and 3 others made it through to the throne ship. "The anchor is inside," Dongsu reported. "We have to board." They crashed through the throne ship's hull, not docking, crashing, tearing metal and breaking through like bullets. Velsara's ship didn't survive the impact. She and her crew spilled out into a nightmare. The interior of the throne ship wasn't quite real. Gravity worked sideways. Light moved in curves. Geometry was optional. Just existing here was agony. "Move!" Dongsu shouted. They ran through the madness. Humans led the way, their bodies breaking under the strain but still moving. A human soldier named In-Su had his arm snapped backwards. He kept running. Another human, Kyung-soon, was bleeding from her eyes. She kept running. The anchor appeared ahead. It looked like a crystallized star, burning with light that erased shadows and created new ones simultaneously. "We have to destroy it," Dongsu panted. "But it requires a biological sacrifice. It feeds on life force." Velsara understood. Someone had to touch it, let it consume them, use their dying energy to shatter it. Every human present stepped forward. "No," Velsara said. "Draw lots, fairly." They used bullets, removed the powder from cartridges, marked one, shook them up. Dong-su distributed them. Velsara drew first. Empty. Zelmoth. Empty. In-su. Empty. Kyung-soon. Empty. Dong-su looked at his bullet for a long moment, then smiled. Just like his brother had smiled. "Marked," he said quietly. "Let me go instead," Velsara begged. "No, Commander." Dong-su handed her a small data chip. "Give this to Earth. Tell them we proved what my brother believed, that humans matter, that we can stand with anyone, that gods can die when humans decide they should." He walked toward the anchor before she could stop him. "Dong-su!" He didn't turn around, just raised his hand in farewell and touched the burning crystal. The scream was soundless, but felt in bones and souls. The anchor shattered. The throne ship began to break apart. Reality reasserted itself violently. "Run!" Velsara grabbed the others and pulled them back toward their entry point. The throne ship was collapsing inward. The eternal beings outside were screaming, their forms flickering, losing cohesion. Without their anchor, they couldn't maintain presence in physical reality. They were fleeing. Velsara made it to an escape pod and launched. The throne ship exploded behind her, a blast of impossible colors and dying gods. The eternal beings scattered into deep space, broadcasting one final message. Never return to the hunting grounds of Terra. Mark that world as forbidden. The Death Seekers dwell there, the ones who refuse to stop. They will end us all if given time. Then they were gone. The battle was over. The Eternal Choir had been defeated, driven away by mortals who should have lost, by humans who didn't understand that gods were supposed to be invincible. Velsara's pod was recovered 3 hours later. She was the only survivor from her ship. Zelmoth was gone. Most of her crew was gone. 90% of the human fleet was gone. But they'd won. The war ended not with negotiations or surrender, but with the enemy fleeing in terror. The galaxy was free. The eternal choir would not return. Not in this generation. Maybe not ever. Velsara spent 3 months recovering. Then she asked for transport to Earth. The planet was different from what she'd expected. Not a military fortress, but a world of green and blue, cities and farms, mountains and oceans. A world that looked peaceful, even though it had sent millions to die in space. She visited a memorial, a simple stone wall with names carved into it. So many names. Taeho, Jiwoo, Haiwan, Sungmin, Dongsu, Bo-Ra. Thousands more. A human child was placing flowers at the base. Maybe 7 years old. Female, with dark hair and a bright smile. "Did you know any of them?" the child asked. "Yes," Velsara replied. "I fought beside them. They saved everyone." "My mom is up there." The child pointed at a name. "She flew a cargo ship, rammed it into a god. Dad says she was brave." She was. Why did they all do it? Why did they fight when they could have run? Velsara thought about that question. She'd been asking herself the same thing for months. "Because someone had to," she finally said. "And your people decided, why not us?" The child nodded like this made perfect sense. "That's what my teacher says. She says humans fight because we're the ones who show up, even when it's scary." Your teacher is right. Will there be more wars? Probably. There are always more wars. Then I'll fight too when I'm old enough. The child said it so simply. No fear, no hesitation, just acceptance that when the time came, she'd stand up and charge into impossible odds. Because that's what humans did. Velsara finally understood. She'd spent months wondering why the eternal choir feared humans. Why ancient gods who'd conquered galaxies fled from primitive mammals. It wasn't because humans were stronger, or smarter, or more advanced. It was because humans expected gods to bleed. Every other species in the galaxy understood their place. They knew when they were outmatched. They calculated odds and surrendered when necessary. They survived through wisdom and caution. Humans survived through sheer stubborn refusal to accept reality. They saw something impossible and attacked it anyway. They faced certain death and charged forward anyway. They fought gods with stone and bronze and nuclear fire and whatever they had at hand. And sometimes, impossibly, they won. Not because they were special, but because they didn't understand they were supposed to lose. Velsara knelt beside the child and placed her own flowers at the memorial. "Thank you," she whispered to the names on the wall, "for teaching me, for showing me that impossible just means no one's tried hard enough yet." The child took her hand. "Will you come to my school? My teacher wants to meet aliens. She says we need to learn from each other." "I'd like that," Velsara said. She stood up, holding the child's hand, and walked away from the memorial. Behind her, the names of the dead stood silent, witness to one simple truth. Gods should fear humans. Not because humans are divine, but because when gods demand worship, humans ask why. And when gods say impossible, humans say, "Watch me." And when gods threaten the universe, humans charge forward and make them bleed. That's why deities fear their strength. Not the strength of weapons or technology, but the strength to keep standing when everything says to fall, to keep fighting when logic says to surrender, to keep believing that victory is possible even when mathematics says it's not. Velsara looked up at the sky, at the stars where the eternal choir had fled in terror, where the void swarm had retreated in fear, where the old ones had abandoned their claims millennia ago. Somewhere out there, gods were watching Earth, hoping humans would stay on their small blue planet, praying that these death seekers would never spread to the stars. But Velsara knew the truth. She'd seen it in Taeho's eyes, in Jiwoo's courage, in Dongsu's sacrifice, in that child's simple certainty. Humans were already spreading to the stars, and when they arrived, reality itself would have to adjust. Because humans didn't ask permission from the universe. They just showed up and started changing things, even if it killed them, especially if it killed them. That's what made them terrifying. That's what made gods fear. Humans didn't just refuse to die, they refused to lose, and somehow, impossibly, stubbornly, they made it true.